The time is exactly 1:24 a.m. The date is March 18th, 1990.
Sunday morning?
Exactly. And while most of the world is asleep, Boston is it's just coming down from a massive citywide party.
It was St. Patrick's Day weekend.
The biggest one in the country. So you have a city that's completely distracted. The police are swamped with, noise complaints, bar fights, all the usual chaos. And in that chaos, a white hatchback pulls up to a curb on Palace Road.
Right by the museum.
Right by a side entrance.
Right.
And the city itself, the geography, the timing, it's all providing this perfect shield for what's about to happen.
2 men were inside that car.
2 men, and they're dressed as police officers. They look the part, they act the part, but they're about to set in motion something that becomes this permanent open wound in the art world.
We're discussing the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft.
It's the single largest property theft in the history of the world, period.
And to be clear on the scale of this, for the record, 13 distinct works of art were removed from the museum.
13 pieces.
The financial magnitude is, it's significant. In 1990, right after the theft, the FBI put the value at $200 million.
Which is already an astronomical sum.
It is. But by the year 2000, that estimate was revised. It went up to $500 million.
Wow.
And in more recent years, you have art dealers, other valuation experts. They've pushed the figure even higher. Some say it's closer to $600 million.
$600 million. I mean, that number is almost an abstraction. It's so hard to wrap your head around $500 million just vanishing in less than 90 minutes.
81 minutes, to be precise.
But the reason this story endures, the reason we're talking about it now, isn't just the money, it's the silence. The absolute deafening silence that followed. We are decades away from that night. We've seen the invention of forensic DNA technology, global surveillance, cold cases from the 70s being solved, and yet this one is just frozen in time.
There have been no arrests.
No.
And no recoveries. Not a single one of the 13 works has ever been seen again officially.
The frames are still empty on the walls. So our mission here is to really walk through the facts. We're going to deconstruct that timeline, look at exactly what was lost, and examine the really strange anomalies of the crime itself.
And then we'll detail the investigation. It's a very complex story involving the FBI and, of course, the Boston Mafia. Our analysis will rely strictly on the known facts from the source material.
Okay, so before we walk through those doors on March 18th, we have to understand the building. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It isn't like other museums. It's not a fortress. It's not some sterile white box.
No, it's designed to look like a 15th century Venetian palace.
Exactly. It feels like a palace that was just dropped into the middle of Boston's Fenway neighborhood. And that was all intentional. It was built by Isabella Stewart Gardner, who wasn't just, a collector. She curated an entire atmosphere.
She was a prominent American art collector, active from 1840 to 1924. The museum opened in 1903 as a home for her personal collection.
And she was very, very specific about how it had to be maintained after her death.
Yes. This is a crucial detail. Her will contained a very strict stipulation.
What was it?
The arrangement of the artwork was not to be altered in any way. Nothing could be sold, and nothing new could be purchased or added. The collection had to remain completely static, frozen, exactly as she left it.
So that one rule, that nothing moves, is so important to this story. It means when you steal from the Gardner, you're not just taking an object, you're breaking this legal and curatorial seal that's been in place for a century.
That's correct.
But by the 1980s, the reality of, maintaining this Venetian palace in the middle of a Boston winter, that reality was setting in.
There was significant financial strain. She endowed the museum with $3.6 million upon her death, which was a vast sum then. But by the late 1980s, that endowment was stretched thin.
And the building itself was struggling. It lacked modern climate control. It was in constant need of maintenance. And when you're worried about just keeping the roof from leaking, sometimes other things. The backseat.
Security, for instance.
Right.
The financial issues were well documented. The museum was operating with a deficit. But the security concerns, they weren't just theoretical. They had a warning.
What kind of warning?
In 1982, 8 years before the heist, the FBI uncovered a plot by a group of Boston criminals to rob the museum.
So they knew it was a target.
They knew. And that intelligence forced the administration to spend some money on upgrades. They installed 60 infrared motion detectors in the galleries.
Okay, so that's something.
And they put in a closed-circuit television system. But this system only consisted of 4 cameras and they were all placed on the building's perimeter.
So they harden the shell, they put eyes on the street, on the outside walls. But what about inside? What happens if someone actually gets past that outer perimeter? What's watching them then?
Nothing. There were no cameras installed inside the galleries.
None at all.
None. The Board of Trustees at the time had determined that the cost of an internal surveillance system was simply prohibitive.
That one decision. I mean, that's the hinge point for this whole mystery, isn't it? No internal video means no visual record of the crime. All we have is data from the motion detectors.
And the flaws went deeper than just hardware. The human element, the protocols, they were also compromised.
The way the guards could call for help was, I mean, it sounds almost medieval, even for 1990.
The protocols were minimal. The only way for the guards to contact the Boston police was a single panic button located at the main security desk.
Just one button.
Yes. And unlike other major museums, the Gardner didn't have a fail-safe system. There was no requirement for the night watchman to, say, place hourly phone calls to the police.
A check-in call, right?
Right, correct. In a standard system, if that call is missed, police are dispatched automatically. The Gardner Museum operated without that redundancy.
So it was basically an honor system. You're trusting that nothing goes wrong, and if it does, that your guard can get to that one specific button at that one desk.
That's right.
And the people they hired for this job, they weren't, retired police officers or trained security professionals.
No, the guards were paid just slightly above minimum wage. They were often college students, artists, musicians, people looking for a quiet place to work overnight.
And this wasn't a secret.
The security director at the time had actually requested higher salaries to attract better staff, maybe people with law enforcement backgrounds. But that request was denied by the board, again, due to the financial constraints. The security flaws were described by staff as an open secret.
An open secret. So the stage is set. You have a building with $500 million of art, protected by a skeleton crew of 2, no cameras inside, and a security system that hinges on one button.
A vulnerable target.
Let's go to that night, March 18th. We have 2 guards on duty.
Rick Abath, who was 23 years old, he was a regular night watchman, and Randy Hestan, who was 25.
And for Hestan, this was not a normal night.
It was his very first time working the night shift at the museum.
His first night. It's just incredible to think about. Your first night on the job, and you walk straight into the biggest art heist in history. The protocol is simple, right? One guard patrols, the other sits at the desk.
Correct. The patrolling guard carried a flashlight and a walkie-talkie. The other monitored the desk, and the camera feeds from the perimeter.
Abath takes the first patrol, and this is where the timeline starts to get weird. Before the thieves even show up on the doorstep, strange things are already happening inside the museum.
During Abath's first patrol, around 12:30 a.m., fire alarms began to sound in several of the galleries.
Okay.
Abath went to investigate the areas indicated on the control panel, but he found no evidence of fire or smoke. When he returned to the security room, the panel was still indicating smoke in multiple disconnected rooms.
Which would be very unlikely.
He assumed it was a malfunction, and to stop the noise, he disabled the entire fire alarm panel.
He just turned it off. Okay, in isolation, you could see that as a practical move. A loud buzzer is going off, you think it's broken, you shut it down. But in the context of what happens next, it creates a significant blind spot.
It does. And then there's the matter of the side door. This is a detail the FBI has scrutinized for over 30 years.
What did he do?
Before finishing his rounds, Abath went to the side entrance on Palace Road. The museum's electronic logs show that he opened the door briefly and then shut it again.
And he didn't tell his partner about this.
No, he did not inform Hestan of this action. And this occurred just a short time before the thieves arrived at that same door.
We'll definitely come back to the implications of that door opening. But for now, Abath finishes his patrol, he sits down at the desk, Hestan goes out on his rounds, and it's quiet. And then, at 1:24 a.m., the buzzer rings.
At the side entrance.
Abath looks at his CCTV monitor, and he sees 2 men standing there in full police uniforms.
The thieves used the intercom. They told Abath they were police officers, and they were investigating a disturbance.
And you have to put yourself in his shoes for a second. It's St. Patrick's Day weekend. The city is full of parties. It's completely plausible that a neighbor called about noise or that someone tried to jump the fence.
It was a believable story.
He sees the uniforms on his little black and white screen. He's been trained his whole life to respect that uniform. He buzzes them in.
At 1:24 a.m., he released the magnetic lock on the outer door. The thieves entered a small, locked foyer that separates the street from the museum proper.
So they're inside the first layer of security. They walk up to the security desk.
They asked Abath if anyone else was in the building. He confirmed that his partner was on patrol, and they instructed him to radio Hestand and tell him to return to the security desk immediately.
So now the thieves are inside, they're at the desk, and as Hestand is walking back, Abath starts to get a bad feeling. He's looking at these two officers up close, and something just doesn't feel right. He notices the mustache on the taller man.
Abath later told investigators that the taller man's mustache looked fake. It seemed glued on.
And at that moment, the shorter thief looks right at Abath and says something strange.
He said, "You look familiar." He suggested there might be a warrant out for Abath's arrest and demanded that he step out from behind the desk to provide his identification.
This is such a classic manipulation tactic. It's brilliant in a way. They put him on the defensive. He's not thinking about protecting the museum anymore. He's thinking, I don't have a warrant. I need to prove my innocence.
It's a psychological maneuver.
So he does it. He steps away from the desk. He walks away from the only panic button in the room.
As soon as Abath moved away from the desk, the shorter man pushed him up against a wall, spread his legs, and handcuffed him.
Just like that.
Randy Heston arrived back at the security desk just moments later, walking right into the situation. The taller thief immediately turned Heston toward the wall and handcuffed him as well.
And with both guards now in cuffs, the pretense is finally dropped.
The thief said, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery."
The game is over. They aren't police. They have total control. So the next step is containment. They can't just leave the guards cuffed at the main desk. A phone could ring, maintenance could show up. They have to disappear them.
They took both guards down to the basement.
Into the bowels of the museum.
Their heads and eyes were wrapped completely in duct tape. They were then separated and handcuffed to a steam pipe and a workbench.
And they went through their wallets.
Yes. The thieves took their IDs, found their home addresses. They made a point of telling the guards, "We know where you live."
A clear threat.
But they also offered a strange promise. They told the guards that if they stayed quiet and didn't cause any trouble, they'd get a reward in about a year.
A reward. It's so bizarre. So this whole process, from subduing them at the desk to getting them taped up in the basement, how long did that take?
It was completed by approximately 1:35 a.m. The entire process of taking control of the museum and its staff took less than 15 minutes.
15 minutes, the museum is theirs, the guards are gone, no cameras inside, no one is coming to check on them until morning, they have the run of the place. Now the real work begins.
They begin to move through the museum, and we can track their movements not by video, but by the motion detectors they triggered.
Where do they go first?
They go up to the second floor to the Dutch room, but there's a pause.
A pause?
The motion detectors don't record the first footsteps in the Dutch room until 1:48 a.m.
So that's 13 minutes after the guards were subdued. What were they doing for 13 minutes?
It's believed they were likely waiting in the foyer just to be certain that no silent alarm had been triggered when Abath stepped away from the desk. They were listening, making sure no police were on the way.
So they were cautious. That pause suggests they were methodical. But once they enter that Dutch room, all that caution just seems to evaporate. This is where the violence against the art itself happens.
Upon entering the Dutch room, the proximity sensors near the most valuable paintings began to sound. The thieves smashed the devices to silence them.
And then they went for the Rembrandts.
They removed two major Rembrandt paintings from the wall, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee and A Lady and Gentleman in Black.
And they didn't handle them carefully.
No. They threw the paintings face down onto the marble floor, shattering the protective glass frames. Then, using a blade of some kind, they cut the canvases directly out of their stretchers.
That detail, it's just the most brutal part of the whole story. The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, it's Rembrandt's only seascape. He painted it in 1633. It's this masterpiece of motion and light, with Christ calm in the middle of this raging storm. And these men, they just threw it on the floor and took a box cutter to it.
They left the jagged edges of the canvas still attached to the wooden stretcher.
Just butchered it.
They also removed another large Rembrandt from the wall, a self-portrait painted on a heavy slab of wood. But they didn't take it.
Why not?
They left it leaning against a cabinet. Investigators believe it was simply too heavy or too bulky for them to carry out.
So instead of the massive oil on wood,
they took a different self-portrait, a tiny etching by Rembrandt about the size of a postage stamp that was displayed just beneath the larger one.
Okay, so that's two major Rembrandts cut from their frames, one tiny one taken. Then they turned to the Vermeer.
The concert.
This is a tragedy on a whole other level. I mean, Vermeer's output was so small.
There are only 34 authenticated paintings by Johannes Vermeer known to exist in the entire world. The concert is one of them.
What's it worth?
In a 2015 valuation, it was estimated at $250 million. It is widely considered to be the single most valuable stolen object in the world.
And they took two other pieces from the Dutch room, right? A bit of a strange mix.
Yes. They took Landscape with Obelisk by Gilbert Flink. For many years, it was actually misattributed to Rembrandt, so it's likely the thieves thought they were getting a third Rembrandt.
Ah, I see. And the last piece?
An ancient Chinese bronze beaker called a Gai.
No, that just seems like an odd choice. In a room filled with priceless Dutch Golden Age paintings, you take a heavy bronze beaker.
The Guodi dates to the Shang dynasty, around the 12th century BC. It was, in fact, the oldest object in the entire museum. But its financial value, maybe several $1,000s, was a tiny fraction of the paintings surrounding it.
So what does that suggest?
Its theft suggests the perpetrators may not have been working from a specific list, or that they were not guided strictly by market value.
Right. It feels more like they were just grabbing things that looked old and expensive. Heavy, bronze, ancient. It looks valuable, so they take it. And this theory, it's sort of reinforced by what happens next in the short gallery.
Correct. At 1:51 a.m., motion data shows one of the thieves moved from the Dutch room into the adjacent short gallery.
What did he do in there?
He first tried to remove a large Napoleonic flag from its display case. He started unscrewing the frame, but apparently couldn't get it open. So he gave up on the flag itself.
But he didn't leave empty-handed.
No. Instead, he unscrewed the decorative eagle finial from the top of the flagpole.
The shiny gold ornament on top.
Yeah.
It's almost childish. Like, I can't get the big prize, so I'll take this shiny part. They also grabbed a few other things in there, right? Some sketches.
5 sketches by the artist Edgar Degas. They were small works on paper, each less than a square foot in size. Their combined value is under $100,000.
Which, in the context of a $600 million heist, is basically nothing.
It's negligible.
Okay, so they've hit the Dutch room, the short gallery. Now we come to the blue room on the first floor. And this is where the timeline and the evidence, they just stop making any sense.
A painting by Edouard Manet Tortoni was stolen from the blue room. The motion detectors in the blue room did not detect any movement at all during the entire 81 minutes the thieves were inside the building.
So nobody went in there?
The only footsteps recorded in that room for the entire night were from Rickabath's initial patrol hours earlier. Yet, by the end of the robbery, the Manet was gone.
A painting vanishes from a room that nobody entered. It's a locked room mystery inside a heist. We will definitely come back to what that implies about Rickabath. But for now, the thieves have their haul. It's getting late.
It's nearing 2:40 a.m. They've been inside for almost an hour and a half.
What's their exit strategy?
First, they returned to the basement. They checked on the guards one last time.
What did they say?
They simply asked, "Are you comfortable?"
So polite. Then what?
They went to the security director's office. They took the video cassettes from the VCR that recorded the perimeter CCTV footage. They also took the dot matrix printouts from the motion detector system.
They were trying to erase their tracks, wiping the tapes.
Yes, but they made a crucial mistake. They didn't realize that all the motion data was also being captured and stored on a hard drive inside the base of the computer system.
And they left a hard drive.
They left it untouched. That hard drive is the only reason we have a precise timeline of their movements through the galleries.
That's the digital ghost they left behind. So they have their loot, they think they've wiped the tapes, they're ready to go.
The side doors open at 2:40 a.m., and then again at 2:45 a.m., and then they're gone. They drive off into the Boston night.
And the museum is just quiet, the alarm panel is off, the guards are duct-taped in the basement. Nobody knows anything is wrong until hours later.
The next shift of guards arrived for their morning duty. They couldn't get inside and couldn't establish contact with the night staff via radio. They called the security director, who came to the museum, let them in, and found the security desk empty.
And that's when they call the real police.
The police were notified. They conducted a search of the building and eventually discovered Abath and Hestand, still bound but unharmed, in the basement.
When you look at the final list of what was taken, it's just such a strange, puzzling collection. You have the single most valuable stolen object in the world, the Vermeer. You have these masterpiece Rembrandts.
But then you also have the bronze beaker, the flag finial, the small Degas sketches.
And then there's what they left behind, which is almost more confusing.
The selection has baffled investigators for decades. They took the Vermeer and the Rembrandts from the Dutch room, but they ignored other incredibly valuable works right there on the walls by artists like Raphael, Botticelli, and Michelangelo.
And they never went to the third floor at all, right?
Correct. They never entered the third-floor gallery, which housed Titian's The Rape of Europa. At the time, that painting was arguably the single most valuable work of art in the entire city of Boston.
So if you're a professional art thief, hired by some shadowy billionaire with a specific shopping list, you do not take a flag ornament and leave a Titian. You just don't.
And you wouldn't use a blade to crudely cut canvases from their stretchers. A professional knows that this method causes catastrophic damage and destroys a significant portion of the artwork's value.
Right, the crude cutting, the rolling, it just screams amateur. Or at least it suggests the thieves weren't art experts.
The theft of the Chinese go and the eagle finial seems to confirm a lack of sophistication. It implies they were grabbing items that looked valuable, rather than items they knew to be valuable.
Which brings us to the investigation. The FBI shows up, the scene is processed, and the first rule in any investigation like this is you look at the people who had the keys. The focus turns immediately to the night guard, Rick Abath.
Richard Abath was a person of interest from the very beginning due to several anomalies in his actions and the evidence.
Let's start with the side door.
The first major point of suspicion was his opening of the side door during his patrol, just before the thieves arrived. Abath's claim was that he was just routinely checking to make sure it was locked.
But that wasn't standard procedure.
No. His colleagues and former guards stated that this was not a normal procedure. In fact, supervisors monitoring the electronic logs would have seen that on the printouts and likely would have reprimanded him for it.
So the investigators had a different theory.
They speculated that opening the door might have been a prearranged signal to the thieves, who were likely parked outside, waiting. A signal that the coast was clear.
And then there's the blue room, the Manet that just disappeared, from a room where the motion detectors say nobody went.
The data is clear. The only person recorded in that room that night was Abath, during his patrol hours before the thieves ever entered the building.
Which leaves two possibilities, right? Either the motion detector in that one room specifically failed that night, or
the Manet was removed from the wall before the thieves arrived.
And there was more. Years later, the FBI released a piece of video that raised even more questions.
Yes, in 2015, they released security footage from the night before the theft. It shows Rick Abath buzzing an unidentified man into the museum at night. They talk at the security desk for a few minutes, and then the man leaves.
This was a complete breach of protocol.
A major breach. When questioned, Abath told investigators he had no memory of the incident or the man's identity. Former guards later identified the man as the museum's deputy security chief, but the fact that Abath allowed an unauthorized late-night entry and then claimed to have forgotten it added to the cloud of suspicion.
But despite all of it, the door, the Manet, the strange visitor Abath maintained his innocence for the rest of his life. He passed away in 2024, and the FBI's initial assessment of him and of Hestan was pretty blunt.
The agent who led the case in the early years stated his belief that the guards were simply too incompetent and unsophisticated to have been the masterminds behind a crime of this scale.
So if you rule out the guards as the masterminds, you have to look at outside the museum. You have to look at the professionals. And in Boston in 1990, that meant organized crime.
At that time, Boston's criminal underworld was dominated by two main factions. You had the Italian-American patriarch of crime family, mostly based in the North End.
And you had the largely Irish-American Winter Hill Gang, run by the infamous James Whitey Bulger.
Whitey Bulger was an obvious early suspect. The FBI looked into him extensively. Bulger vehemently denied any involvement, and intelligence gathered from his own network seemed to support that. Informants claimed Bulger was actually furious about the robbery.
Furious why? Because he's an art lover.
No. He was furious that such a high-profile, lucrative crime had happened on his turf, without his knowledge, without his permission, and most importantly, without him getting a cut of the profits. He was reportedly looking for the thieves himself to demand a tribute.
That sounds exactly like Whitey Bulger. It's not about the art, it's about the tax. The FBI also looked at a possible IRA connection, right?
They did. The IRA had a history of using art theft in Europe as a way to raise funds, and Bulger had ties to them. But those leads ultimately went nowhere.
So if it wasn't Bulger, where did the investigation go next?
The FBI's primary focus for many years has been a different crew, an outfit based in Dorchester, associated with the Patriarca family, run by a man named Carmelo Merlino.
The Merlino game.
Yes. In 2013, the FBI held a press conference and announced with a high degree of confidence that they knew who the thieves were. They said they were members of a criminal organization with roots in the Mid-Atlantic and New England. Subsequent reporting and intelligence leaks have made it clear they were referring to the Merlino crew.
And within that crew, two names have come up again and again as the likely men in the police uniforms: George Reisfelder and David Turner.
Let's start with George Reisfelder. He was an associate of Merlino's. He died of a drug overdose in July of 1991, just over a year after the theft.
What was the connection to the heist?
Well, for one, he bore a strong physical resemblance to the police sketch of the taller, slimmer thief. But more compellingly, years after his death, his own siblings told investigators they remembered seeing a painting in his bedroom that looked very similar to the stolen Manet, Ches Tortoni.
A stolen Manet, one of the jewels of the Gardner collection, just hanging in a bedroom in Dorchester. It's incredible. It just speaks to the absolute lack of a long-term plan. They stole it, and they just had it.
It seems that way. Then there's David Turner.
The suspected second thief.
Correct. Another associate of the Merlino gang. The FBI suspected him of being the shorter man. Turner, for his part, had an alibi. He claimed he was in Florida during the heist and even produced credit card records to prove it.
But the FBI didn't buy it.
Investigators suspected the alibi was manufactured, that perhaps he gave his credit card to an associate to use in Florida while he was in Boston. They finally got leverage on Turner in 1999 when he was arrested for plotting a different robbery, an armored car heist.
So they thought they had him. They put the squeeze on him in prison, offered him a deal if he gave up the Gardner art.
They did, but Turner refused to talk. He maintained his ignorance about the art, served his time for the other crime, and was released from prison in 2019.
So the trail for the actual thieves goes cold. But the art had to go somewhere. It didn't just disappear. This is where the story shifts and we get the Connecticut connection.
This is a convoluted path, but it begins with another member of the Merlino crew, a man named Robert Guarente. Guarente died of cancer in 2004. For years, nothing. Then, in 2010, his widow, Eileen Guarente, came forward and gave a statement to the FBI.
What did she say?
She told the agents that her late husband, Robert, had been in possession of the stolen paintings for a time. But she said that when he became very ill, he passed the art to another mob associate for safekeeping, a man named Robert Gentile, who lived in Manchester, Connecticut.
Robert Gentile. This one man became the absolute center of the FBI's universe for the last decade of his life. He's this elderly, low-level gangster living a quiet life in a Connecticut suburb, and the feds were convinced he was literally sitting on the $600 million treasure.
And Gentile denied it, over and over. He claimed he knew nothing about the paintings. So the FBI raided his house.
And what did they find?
They brought in ground-penetrating radar. And in the backyard, under a false floor in a shed, they found a secret ditch.
A secret ditch? It sounds like the final scene of a movie. They open it up and...
The ditch was empty. Yes. But Gentile's son told investigators a curious story. He said that a few years earlier, a storm had caused the ditch to flood, and that his father had been extremely distraught about the condition of whatever had been stored down there.
Which suggests something valuable might have been ruined, but the ditch wasn't the only thing they found at Gentile's house.
No. In his basement, agents found a copy of the Boston Herald newspaper from March 1990 with a front-page story about the theft.
Okay.
Tucked inside that newspaper was a piece of paper. On it was a handwritten list of every one of the stolen Gardner artworks, with an estimated black market price next to each one.
It's very hard to explain away. What was his story?
Gentile claimed that another criminal had given him the list, asking him to try and broker a return of the art for the reward money. He maintained he was just acting as a potential middleman, not the person holding the art.
Did they give him a polygraph?
They did, and he failed it when he said he didn't know where the art was. But then he demanded a retest on a very specific question.
What was the question?
He was retested on the statement that Eileen Guarente, the widow who implicated him, had actually shown him the small Rembrandt etching. And on that specific point, the polygraph indicated he was telling the truth.
So it just became this circle of blame. The widow points at the old old gangster points back at the widow, and neither of them ever produces the art.
That's essentially what happened.
So it raises the fundamental question that haunts this entire case. Why? Why steal art that is so famous you can never sell it? You can't fence a Vermeer. You can't hang the Storm on the Sea of Galilee in your living room. It's worthless on the open market.
Which leads to the theory that the motive was never about money. It was about leverage.
The get-out-of-jail-free card theory. This is where Bobby Donati comes in.
Robert Bobby Donati was a gangster in the Patriarcha crime family. At the time of the theft in 1990, his boss, a capo named Vincent Ferrara, was in jail facing murder charges.
So the theory is Donati masterminded the heist specifically to use the art as a bargaining chip.
The intention, according to this theory, was to trade the paintings back to the authorities in exchange for Ferrara's release, or at least a reduced sentence.
And there's evidence for this. Donati actually went to visit Ferrara in jail right before the theft and supposedly promised him, "I'm going to do something to get you out."
The plan, however, never came to fruition. Bobby Donati was murdered in September of 1991, shot to death as part of an internal gang war. He took whatever secrets he had to the grave.
And the art was never traded.
There's also some corroboration for this theory from another source, Miles Connor Jr.
A very famous, very skilled art thief in his own right.
Yes, though he was in jail at the time of the Gardner Heist. Connor has long claimed that his friend Bobby Donati and another associate were the masterminds. Connor also noted that Donati had, on a previous occasion, expressed a specific interest in stealing the Napoleonic finial.
The finial, that strange low-value item, Donati had his eye on that specific piece.
According to Miles Connor.
So we have all these theories, all these dead gangsters in empty ditches, but there was one moment, one brief, tantalizing moment, where it seemed like the art was physically within reach, the story of the reporter and the midnight ride.
In August of 1997, a reporter for the Boston Herald named Tom Mashberg was contacted by a known criminal and antiques dealer named William Youngworth.
And Youngworth claims he has access to the paintings.
He does. He agrees to show Mashberg proof. So, in the middle of the night, he drives the reporter from Boston to a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn.
Imagine being that reporter. It's late, it's dark, you're driving for hours with a known felon to a warehouse in Brooklyn. You have no idea if this is real or if you're being set up.
Youngworth led Mashberg to a storage unit inside the warehouse. He pulled out a long cardboard tube.
And inside?
He carefully removed a rolled-up canvas and unfurled it under the beam of a flashlight. Mashberg looked at it closely. He saw the cracking on the old canvas. He saw Rembrandt's signature on the rudder of the ship in the painting. He was convinced he was looking at the storm on the Sea of Galilee.
And to prove it wasn't a fake, Youngworth gave him physical evidence.
He gave Mashberg several tiny paint chips that had flaked off the canvas.
Actual pieces of the painting. So they had them analyzed. What did the tests show?
The results were ambiguous. The forensics confirmed the paint chips were from the correct time period, the 17th century. They contained the correct pigments for that era. But the specific mixture of oils did not match known samples from the storm on the Sea of Galilee. It was a potential match for Vermeer's The Concert, or it could have been from a different 17th century painting entirely.
And there were other skeptics, right? People who questioned what Mashberg actually saw.
Yes. Art conservation experts pointed out that the storm on the Sea of Galilee was covered in a very thick, hard layer of varnish. It wouldn't be possible to simply unfurl it like a poster. Rolling it tightly enough to fit in a tube would have likely shattered the varnish and caused catastrophic damage.
So they thought it might have been a high-quality copy or a different painting used to try and get the reward money.
That was the suspicion. Youngworth's negotiations with the authorities fell apart. He wanted full immunity, the reward money, and he wanted his friend Miles Connor released from prison. The demands were too high, the proof was too uncertain, and the trail went cold again.
Which brings us to today. Where does this case stand right now?
The current status is really defined by two things, the reward and the legal situation. The reward started at $1 million. In 1997, it was raised to $5 million. Then in 2017, the museum doubled it to $10 million.
$10 million.
It is the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution for the return of stolen property. The only condition is that the information must lead directly to the recovery of the art in good condition.
And what about the legal risk? If you're some guy and you find these paintings in your grandpa's attic, can you return them without going to jail?
The statute of limitations for the theft itself expired in 1995. The original thieves can no longer be prosecuted for the robbery. Furthermore, federal prosecutors have repeatedly and publicly stated that anyone who facilitates the return of the items will not be prosecuted for possession of stolen property. The sole goal of the investigation at this point is recovery.
They just want the art back. No questions asked.
Essentially, yeah.
And the museum.
Yep.
It's moved on, of course, but it hasn't forgotten. If you go to the Gardner today and you walk into the Dutch room, you see the direct result of Isabella Stewart Gardner's will.
Because the will stipulates that nothing in the collection can be moved or altered, The empty frames from which the paintings are cut still hang on the walls.
They're just there, empty.
They mark the exact spots where the Rembrandts, the Vermeer, and the Flink once hung. The museum considers them placeholders, a testament to the missing works, and a symbol of hope for their eventual return.
It's one of the most haunting experiences you can have in a museum. You're looking at this beautiful, ornate gold frame, and you're just staring at the silk wallpaper behind it. It's a void, a $600 million ghost. We've covered the timeline, the brutal way they treated these masterpieces. We've talked about the whole roster of mobsters who are likely dead and buried with their secrets. The reality is the art is either destroyed or it's out there somewhere.
The possibilities are disturbingly wide. The art could have been ruined by poor storage, damaged in a flood like the one at Gentile's property. It could have been destroyed in a panic by someone who realized it was too hot to handle. Or, as one anonymous letter sent to the museum in the 90s suggested, the works could be in perfect condition, sitting in a climate-controlled vault in a country with no extradition treaty, waiting for the right moment. The truth is, nobody knows.
It's the ultimate art mystery. Somewhere right now, Rembrandt's only seascape might be rolled up in a tube in an attic or hanging in a private bunker, or it might just be rotting into dust at the bottom of a ditch. The frames are waiting. The $10 million is waiting. But until someone finally decides to talk, the ghosts of the Gardner Museum will remain just that. Ghosts. Thanks for listening.